Stop looking at the spot price for a second, because right now there are basically two silver prices on planet Earth. The screen price you and I see, call it 93-ish, and the survival price big industrial buyers quietly pay when they cannot afford to be wrong. And today's story is about that second number. The title says, The 115th Secret, and before anyone screams in the comments, let me be precise. I cannot independently verify every rumor flying around right now about Samsung paying exactly $115 an ounce on every deal. Rumors move faster than shipping containers. What I can verify is the bigger mechanism, why a company would pay far above spot to lock supply, and that Samsung C&T has already signed real-world prepaid offtake deals tied to silver concentrate output from a mine restart in Mexico. That part is documented in company releases and wire coverage, so if you're here for hype, you'll be disappointed. If you're here for the mechanics, the part that turns conspiracy into balance sheet behavior, keep watching. The lie hidden in the word price. Here's the trap. Spot is not the cost of silver. Spot is the most liquid reference point for paper exposure to silver. Futures, forwards, unallocated accounts, ETFs, swaps, all that. It's a benchmark, a useful benchmark. The LBMA even publishes benchmark prices used across the industry. But spot is not the same thing as, can you deliver me the exact form factor I need on the exact schedule I need with no counterparty drama? Industrial buyers don't buy silver, they buy continuity. If you're Samsung, or a chip maker, or a defense contractor, or an EV supply chain, the nightmare isn't silver goes down $8. The nightmare is silver is not there when production starts. And the moment that becomes your fear, you stop negotiating like an investor, and you start negotiating like a hostage. That's how you get a shadow price, how a $22 premium can exist without anyone breaking the laws of math. People hear $93 on screen, 115s in real life, and they imagine a secret cartel. Sometimes it's not that cinematic, sometimes it's just layers. Spot is one layer. Then you stack fabrication, turning metal into the product form you need, logistics, shipping, insurance, security, timing, immediate delivery costs more than a promise, and financing. If you're preparing a mine restart, you are paying for certainty, not metal sitting ready to go. Think about it like this. A restaurant menu says chicken $10. But if the kitchen runs out of chicken, the real price becomes, how much do you have to pay a supplier to get chicken delivered tonight? Different product, different urgency, different price. That's the difference between screen metal and factory metal. What's actually verifiable about Samsung? Let's anchor this to something real. In October 2025, Silverstone Mining announced a $7 million prepaid offtake financing facility with Samsung C&T tied to restarting the La Parrilla mine complex in Durango, Mexico. The structure matters. Samsung gets rights to purchase 100% of the lead silver concentrate and the zinc concentrates produced at La Parrilla for a 2-year period. That is not Samsung bought all the world's silver, but it is Samsung saying, with legal documents, we want guaranteed flow, not headlines. Prepaid offtake is basically this. I'll fund your restart and upgrades now, and I get first claim on your output later. That's not what you do when you're casually bullish. That's what you do when you're nervous about supply. And notice the psychology shift. Investors debate price targets. Procurement departments debate failure modes. Let me paint you a picture. It's 2:07 a.m. Not in a trading room. In a conference room where nobody wears a hoodie. There's a spreadsheet on the wall, not a chart. It's a build schedule. And one line item is glowing red, silver. The engineer says, if we miss this delivery window, the whole program slips. The procurement lead says, I don't care about the screen price, I care about delivery. And the finance person says, how much is the penalty if the line stops? That's the moment the market flips. Because if a production delay costs you hundreds of millions, paying a premium on raw materials is not expensive. It's cheap insurance. The silver carbon battery rumor and the math problem. Now, the rumor that lit a match under the market is Samsung's solid-state battery roadmap. Samsung has discussed solid-state battery work publicly in the past, including performance claims reported by mainstream outlets. Then analysts and industry commentary started pushing a specific idea, that a silver-based component in certain solid-state designs could materially increase silver usage, with some estimates suggesting grams per cell that could scale up to around a kilogram of silver for a 100 kilowatt-hour pack. I'm going to say this again, slowly. Estimates. Not a Samsung published bill of materials, but even as a thought experiment, it matters. 1 kilogram is about 32.15 troy ounces. At a $93 screen price, that's roughly $2,180 of silver per vehicle. At a $115 survival price, that's roughly $3,797 of silver per vehicle. And you might be thinking, that's nothing for a $60,000 car. True, but the problem is not the cost. The problem is the volume. Because here's the second math problem. Silver is not oil. You cannot just turn the tap and add 20% supply next quarter. So when you hear moved from testing to mass production, the real question isn't the PR line. It's, what did procurement do? And procurement doesn't tweet. Procurement signs contracts. Why lease rates and tightness matter. Okay, let's talk about the signal professionals watch when the physical market gets stressed. Lease rates. Lease rates are basically the cost to borrow metal. When they spike, it's telling you something simple. People who have the metal don't want to lend it out, unless you pay up. The LBMA itself has explained how leasing markets function and why lease rate behavior matters for precious metals. And mainstream market coverage has been talking about tightening inventories and strong demand as silver pushed above $90 in mid-January 2026. Local market coverage in India also noted that 1-month LBMA silver lease rates had been elevated, including 7% plus levels a few days earlier, before cooling back down. Now, do lease rates prove the London vaults are empty? No, that's a leap. But lease rates do tell you the convenience yield of immediate metal just went up. And when immediate metal becomes more valuable than future promises, premiums appear, quietly, off-screen, in real contracts. London default without the movie trailer. You've probably heard the phrase London default. Most people imagine a Hollywood scene, doors locked, vaults empty, a headline screaming LBMA defaults. Reality is usually more boring and more dangerous. A default in modern markets often looks like delays, cash settlement incentives, changing delivery terms, and people discovering their metal exposure was actually a claim on someone else's metal. So when you hear physical blackout, translate it to something more precise. Deliverable metal is being rationed via price, paperwork, and priority. And that last word, priority, is the one that scares small players. The national security pivot is not a meme. Pivot. Here's where it gets spicy. And this part is not rumor. In November 2025, the U.S. Geological Survey's final 2025 list of critical minerals added silver. Read that again. Silver. Critical. That matters because once something is treated as strategic, incentives change. Permitting, domestic sourcing, stockpiling logic, supply chain security policy, and yes, potentially who gets priority in a crunch. Does that mean a private market freeze is guaranteed? No. But it tells you governments are thinking about silver less like jewelry and more like infrastructure. That is exactly the environment where big firms lock supply early and pay whatever premium is required. Why Samsung would pay up even if the paper price is real. Let's kill another misconception. Paying a premium does not automatically prove spot is fake. It proves something else. Spot is the price of the most financial form of silver. But end users need the most physical form of silver, and the gap between those two is where stress shows up first. In normal times, that gap is small. In strained times, that gap becomes a canyon, which brings us back to the 115. Even if the exact number is wrong, the behavior is what matters. Prepay mines, secure offtake, cut the line, get priority. That is not investment behavior. That is survival behavior. Your 48-hour watch list for whether this is real. If you want to know whether the $115 story is noise or signal, don't argue on Twitter. Watch these instead. New offtake announcements. Real deals show up as filings and press releases, not anonymous screenshots. Samsung's existing offtake structure is already on record. Lease rate behavior. Not the exact number, the direction and persistence. A quick spike can be a hiccup. A sustained elevation is a warning flare. Premium chatter in physical markets. Coins, bars, industrial grain. If delivery times stretch and premiums rise, that's the real-world stress test, policy language. When officials talk about critical minerals and supply chain security, that's the backdrop, and silver is already in that category in the USGS list. Price behavior around big levels. Silver breaking above $90 this month was covered widely, including by Reuters. If price keeps gapping on thin liquidity, that tells you positioning is unstable. Paper, unallocated, allocated, the part nobody explains. Quick vocabulary because this is where people get fooled. When most people say, I own silver, they might mean three completely different things. A price exposure, that's a contract, you're long the number. B, an unallocated claim. That's a promise from a bullion bank that you have a claim on a pool of metal. It's commonly priced off the London benchmark process. C, allocated specific bars in a specific place. That's closer to ownership, the way your brain thinks of ownership. In calm markets, A, B, and C trade close enough that nobody cares. In stressed markets, A can move like lightning, B can become please wait, and C becomes the thing people fight over. It's like airline tickets. Most of the time, the ticket equals a seat. But if the plane is oversold and the gate agent starts offering cash to bump people, you learn the truth. Your ticket was a claim on a seat until the system had to ration seats. That's why the lease rate spike matters. Leasing is literally the system trying to borrow seats so it can keep the flight on schedule. So when you hear shadow price, don't imagine a secret website. Imagine a stressed system doing what stressed systems always do. It rations reality. What would make this story flip overnight? Two things can be true at the same time. The physical market can be tight, and the price can still whipsaw violently. If silver runs too far, too fast, the bear case shows up. Industries slow orders, engineers redesign, substitution happens, inventories get dumped, and paper longs take profit. That's why I'm not here promising a straight line. I'm telling you to watch the plumbing. When the plumbing stays tight, repeated offtakes, elevated lease rates, widening physical premiums, that's when the screen price eventually has to respect the survival price. And when the plumbing relaxes, the hype dies fast. Simple rule, don't marry a narrative. Date the data. And if you ever see sudden cash settlement bonuses being offered instead of delivery, that's the market admitting metal is scarcer than promises. In plain English, watch that closely, period. So what is the 115-day secret, really? The 115-day secret is not a single invoice. It's a concept. When supply chains get nervous, the market splits into two lanes. Lane 1 is the public lane. Spot, futures, charts, headlines, influencers yelling $200 silver tomorrow. Lane 2 is the private lane, offtake financing, direct contracts, long-term concentrate deals, prepayment, priority allocation, and that second lane can create a shadow price that never shows up on your screen until it's too late. So the question isn't, is the screen price wrong? The better question is, which price would a factory trust? What you should do with this information? Let me keep this responsible and practical. Don't confuse a story with a signal. A viral rumor is not a model. What matters is repeated behavior. Premiums, offtake deals, tightness indicators, policy shifts. Understand what you actually own. If you own a paper claim, ask yourself what happens if everyone wants delivery at the same time. If you own physical, ask yourself about storage, liquidity, and security. Avoid leverage when markets get weird. Leverage turns a thesis into a timed bomb. If you want exposure, think in layers. Some people prefer minors. Some prefer physical. Some prefer a mix. But size it like an adult, not like a TikTok bet. And yes, this is not financial advice. I'm explaining mechanics, not telling you what to buy. So if major industrial players are quietly locking future output with prepaid offtakes, and silver is being treated as a critical mineral at the policy level, and spot has already shown you it can rip past $90 fast when conditions align, then maybe the $115 secret isn't about Samsung at all. Maybe it's about you realizing there's a difference between price and availability. Drop a comment with the words shadow price if you made it to the end. And subscribe because the next move in this market won't happen on your chart first. It'll happen in a contract.